How's it going, citizens? My name is Jackadan, and in this video, I want to take some time to discuss what exactly is different about flying in SCM in comparison to nav mode, and why some players struggle to feel in control in certain situations. I'll also highlight a few things to keep in mind to better handle your ship in SCM, and in the end, I'll even give a neat trick that can be very beneficial both in racing and in standard flight. Now, given the nature of my channel, I will mostly be making remarks about use cases in racing, but this is more of a general deep dive into the current implementation of the flight model. I would also like to point out that this video is not meant to be a negative rant on the state of master modes, but more of a representation of feedback from the racing community, as well as my personal experience with this model. I'm sure CIG are already working to keep improving this model, so for the purpose of this video, we're just gonna see how we can make the best with what we have at the moment. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Without further ado, let's get on with the video. So firstly, we need to understand what these master modes have actually done to the flight model. In CitizenCon 2953, Yogi showed the effects of the limitations that the SCM mode applies to your ship. CIG wanted to move away from the ability to trichord. For those who don't know what this is, it's basically the act of inputting thrust in 3 different directions that result in outputting more acceleration that is capable by just thrusting forward. So to combat this, they implemented this egg-shaped limiter, while you're in SCM mode, to encourage players to adopt more of a frontal approach when flying. This is more of a balance change for combat. What this new limiter does is give you a speed cap within the SCM flight in a spherical shape around you. This means that when you're not boosting, you have an equal speed limit in all 6 directions. No matter which direction that you choose, you will always have that limitation, and the TVI will always follow you around. When you activate boost, however, this egg shape will extend forward, so your speed cap will increase in a straight line ahead of you, but you will still be limited on the sides or behind you. None of this is an effect while you're in nav mode, which is why in racing, we would always advocate to fly in nav mode as you don't have any speed limitations. So we understand what this SCM model does, so let's see why it feels so weird if you fly it. When you're in SCM mode and you're moving around unboosted, the first thing that you're gonna notice is the speed cap, of course. The biggest reason that these speeds feel so slow to some people is because the ships have insane acceleration, capable of pulling up to 30 Gs on launch, and so reaching a speed of 250 meters per second will be so easy. The downside to the speed cap is not exactly the speed limitation per se, but more of the awkward handling that the ship can have when at this cap. If we look back at this slide from SitCon, we can see the boundaries of the ship's speed pretty well. But we also have to consider that the vector control is also limited by these boundaries. If we imagine in this graph we're flying unboosted, the TVI will move within the confines of the sphere, but will never allow you to go past it. As long as we remain in SCM unboosted, we are given thrust authority for as long as our limit is in this sphere. The way to get out of this limit is by boosting. So let's see how this affects the thrusters when we go over that limit. So once again, if we fly in a straight line and boost, we will now have an extended top speed. Once we let go of this boost, IFCS will do its best to bring that speed back down, and so the TVI gets pulled back towards you, to the limitation of the unboosted spherical limit. You can also see the representation of the egg pulling in when you try to apply strafe. When you're close to the speed limit, your strafe inputs will be very narrow and will only deviate slightly from the center point. The slower you get, or the closer you are to the unboosted limit, the more range the TVI has to move laterally. Another thing you'll notice is that when you want to turn, if you are turning faster than the thrusters are able to bring the TVI with you, you might lose thrust for a few seconds. What's happening here is that the TVI is actually going out of bounds of the egg as it's too far ahead, and so IFCS will cut thrust from your ship temporarily, slowing you down to bring the TVI back into the boundary of the egg, and then it'll allow you to continue thrusting. You can see a very good example from this when I'm approaching this wide sweeping turn on Miner's Lament. I'm turning the ship, but I'm not actually moving forward, because my TVI was too far ahead of me when I turned, so I moved out of the limits of the egg, so IFCS needed some time to pull the TVI back into this limitation, and then I immediately gained thrust authority again. Naturally, this can be very dangerous and can lead to several crashes if you don't control your thrust inputs well. Let's take another example on Skyscraper with the P-72 Archimedes. Since this ship is a snub bracer, it doesn't have a quantum drive, so I have to fly an SCM. So if I don't manage my boost well, it can be very devastating. Here, I'm maintaining my boost so I can fully utilize the extended speed limits, but in this one instance, I did not have the boost to take me into the turn, so I started slowing down to the unboosted cap, and my vector ended up taking me into the wall as I didn't slow down fast enough to get into the unboosted sphere to regain control. What all of these changes is doing is promoting using your mains to maneuver your ship so you're always pushing the vector to face the direction of the nose. This is even true for thrust values of your ship, with the main thruster being vastly stronger to any of the strafe thrusts. The downside this comes with is that if you're using your mains to go around the corner, it promotes a sideways method of flying, specifically in 0G, as you need to point your nose preemptively to change to your vector in time. If you use head tracking, whether it's from a Tobii or Track IR or even just a webcam, this becomes so much easier to do, and it's almost a must-have for top-hand competitive racing, as you're able to glance over to the TVI while you're flying to bring it in with you. This method of flying applies to both SCM and nav, as the higher speeds in nav make it that you'll have to use your stronger main thrusters to manage your speed. So here's a couple of things that we can take from all of this information. We know that nav mode gives you unrestricted speeds, so for the purpose of racing, we always stay in nav mode whenever possible. In the case of snubs like the Fury LX or the P-72, we are still limited within the SCM egg. So here's what we can do to maximize some performance. First, we remember that the boosted limit extends forwards. So if you need to take a turn, make sure that you're able to keep the TVI within the frontal limit so you don't lose your thrust authorities. Get a feel for the ship and how well it can maintain aero grip as well. So if the ship struggles to bring the TVI, consider slowing down a bit before the turn or taking the entry in SCM and then boosting at the exit, so you're always making sure the TVI stays in front of you. For any other ship, swapping from nav mode to SCM mode immediately applies the SCM limitation on your ship, no matter the speeds. And we can use that to our advantage, especially in 0G, where the top nav speed is way bigger than that in atmosphere. A technique that is not very commonly known but is very helpful in certain situations is what we call SCM braking. This involves pushing as fast as you can in 0G, and instead of slowing with space brake or applying thrust in the opposite vector, you quickly swap to SCM mode and back to nav by double tapping whatever binding you set. Since the speed drop happens instantaneously and the spool up takes a few seconds, by the time the quantum drive spools up back to nav mode, our speed would have dropped significantly more in a shorter amount of time than if we were to have slowed down manually. This is very useful in tight sections in 0G tracks like Miner's Lament, or as a way to slow yourself down from overspeeding towards space stations or other obstacles. That's all I had to say about the implication of SCM on the flight experience. If you think I missed something or gave the wrong information, comment down below and let me know what you think. I want to point out that I do stream twice a week on Twitch and YouTube, so if you want to come hang out and have a more detailed discussion on this topic, make sure to follow there to be notified when I go live. And lastly, if you're interested in getting into Star Citizen yourself, consider using the referral link in the description for a bonus to your starting credits. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and I'll see you on the racetrack.